Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome to this week's YouTube lesson. So I wanted to talk about augmented chords. I haven't done a harmonic lesson in a little while, or something to do with harmony, and I was just thinking about augmented chords because I was writing a tune a few days ago that I just finished up yesterday, and it kind of occurred to me that augmented chords have started to become a really big part of my sound. And the funny thing is I relate to really starting out with harmony and kind of not knowing what to do with augmented chords. For some reason, okay, major, minor, diminished, that made sense, but augmented was always this very odd color. So I wanted to do a bit of a lesson to talk about how you can start using it in your improvisation, in your lines or whatever it may be, and also in your composition. So to kind of kick things off, it's important to know where do augmented chords usually come from, because this can kind of influence one way of using the chord in a diatonic context, and that would be usually you'll see it in harmonic minor or melodic minor as your flat 3 chord in the key. So let's say if I'm in C minor, you have E flat augmented is the chord, right? So if we're in melodic minor, so we have one augmented chord on the flat 3. We can also see it in harmonic minor, just instead of 2 minor, we'll have 2 diminished. 4 minor. And this already opens up a couple of possibilities that you might have heard. So the way I see it with augmented chords, and by the way, I'm also including major 7 sharp 5 chords for this video, is I see them either as a point of rest with some tension in there because of the sharp 5, or I see them as transitional, as in a passing chord. So, for example, every so often I might resolve to a major 7 sharp 5, or use that as a point of rest. I think in one of the tunes off Catharsis, I started with those 3 chords and then used that C major 7 sharp 5 as kind of a point of rest. And there's enough, I think understanding tension and release is a really great gateway to starting to use some of these chords. Because this is a personal view on major 7 sharp 5 chords. I think they kind of have an interesting stability to them. They're not home per se, much like a major or a minor chord would be. But there's enough tension that gives you the sensation of, okay, where's this going to go next? So it still leaves the door open whilst still being pretty resolute. And going back to diatonic functions, this makes sense because it's a tonic functioning chord. So again, if we go back to the C minor example, if I linger on that chord, it's not obtrusive, if you will. So that's one way of using it, just really sticking to the diatonic function of how this chord fits. But where it really starts getting interesting is when you treat it as a passing chord. And I think this is a great way to start opening up using inner voices or voice movement in your chordal playing or your solo playing. This is also great for your comping. Also, it just opens up different avenues for modulations, and this is something I use a lot in my compositions, where at least my compositional style isn't really firmly placed in one key a lot of the time. I like to move around a lot, just follow where my ear takes me, and voice leading is a huge part of that. So augmented chords are a great way to start maybe getting to some new keys or new ideas. So for example, let's take a C augmented chord. Now, if I move any of the notes in the augmented chord, I'm going to end up somewhere different, usually a major or a minor chord. So for example, if I move the bottom voice here, it's almost like a little 5/1 resolution. What if I move the middle voice? And this will be a very familiar sound if you listen to a lot of classical music or even some of the more modern jazz piano players. Right? That's a great color for resolutions, like resolving to a 6 chord. Right? You'll see this a lot in 2/5/1 sometimes. That's very traditional. So there's a couple of uses in that instance. What if we move the top voice? C augmented to F minor. So just from that C augmented chord, I've ended up at 2 different colors. 3 different colors. C augmented to C sharp minor, C augmented to A minor or C6, and C augmented to F minor, which is a 5/1 resolution. What if we move the notes down? Okay, C augmented to C major. What about to A flat over C? And what about if we move the lowest voice? Okay, and then we end up at an E major. I'm using spread triads. This also applies for close position voicings. So we can use the augmented chord to set up modulations to different keys. Now, that little passing motion is a great tool to explore, to start giving your solo playing or even your comping multiple layers or multiple depth, and it kind of gives the illusion that you're a pianist, at least if you're a guitar player. And if you are a pianist watching this, this is just a great way to have some melodies going on while you're playing your chords. So now how I would use this is start to string together progressions using these augmented chords as kind of a transition to get to some place or another. Right? Then, I don't know, where can I go from here? I'm kind of interspersing the augmented chords using voice leading, but it creates this interesting motion that's really colorful as a compositional tool. So those are just some ways that we can use augmented chords in either our solo playing, our comping, or our composition. One is as a point of rest, as I mentioned earlier, or using it in a diatonic setting, in its diatonic function, just to get a very... Oh, there it is. Just to get that sense of color and add an almost mysterious element. It's a stable resolution, but still leaves the door open to go somewhere else. Or what we were just exploring in a little more detail earlier is using it as a transition or a passing chord to set up modulations to new keys, or moving to other chords within a key, just all around to create movement. Essentially, just to wrap this up, to use the augmented chord is to use what it's to use it as what it's intended to be used at. It's a tension building device. So if you create tension and then you resolve that tension earlier, that keeping that in mind, creating tension and then resolving it at some point, is a good thing to keep in mind when using augmented chords, and will make using them a little more simple. So I hope this lesson was interesting for you guys. It was a bit more of a dive into how I look at composition, and also just harmony in general in a more abstract sense. If you enjoyed the video, please comment down below. Do like and subscribe as always, and feel free to send in any other video suggestions. I'm happy to look into several to do more videos in the future. So take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.